This is the video explaining my code. So most of the code that I wrote for the Battleship program that I continued writing is in battleshipplayer.cpp. I did not touch any other class. So when I play the code, it would have the ships, and I can place the ships and I can rotate them. So what I did first straight away was that I copied the drag ship pattern that you wrote, and I tried to mimic it, and I tried to make a follow ship function for that. I'm not sure if this part is necessary, but I copied it from drag ship, that's why it's still there. The first thing that I wrote here is I got the initial position of the ship row column dot get position as initial position, and then what I did was the first thing I tried was this loop, and I thought that this loop would be it for this function, but whenever I played this loop, and if I right now it starts from J and it loops through the end of the rows, but if I started at 0 and I didn't put an extra line here which codes for the first square right here, it will not work. I'm not sure exactly why. That's why this first square of the ship, which would be this one, is outside of the loop and it is hard coded here, and then the rest are loop true. And basically I set position of I got the position of the square that is for this square. I would get the position of this square, and then I would code this square plus 60 in the x direction to account for the 50 here and the 10 here, and then the y would be the same. And the next function that and I implemented it right here, right under follow ship, under ship event handler. So the next thing that I started writing was snap to grid. This is how I first tried to write it, but this didn't work because whenever I tried to use this function, it would snap to, if I were highlighting, for example, if I were highlighting this square, it would not exactly snap to this, but it would either snap to the one here or the one here, depending on whichever side I was closer to. So I made a new snap to grid function. This first vector gets the position of the leading square, and then I initialized two snapped x and snap y here. I also made int temp and int tomp. Basically, this is getting the position of the leading square position and dividing. Basically, it's finding the remainder if divided by 60, and what this will tell you is the position of like whether my mouse position is to the right or to the left of the highlighted square. And depending on that, if it's less than 30, I would have this equation that places it, if it's less than 30, I would place it here, and if it's more, I would place it there. And I have the same function for the y, and after I made these, I looped it through into this loop, and it will loop through all the j, so the columns of the same ship. However, there was a problem with this loop because even though when I placed, if I only had this loop and I tried to place the squares here, what the program would do is that these two squares, which are coded according to the lead square, would be in place, but then this would be slightly off, and I'm not exactly sure why. So what I did was I wrote another function called snap to grid, and what this function does is that it just gets the position of that specific displayed square, and then it readjusts the position of the square by adding 25 and to the x and y, and that's how it is no longer like right here but here. Lastly, I wrote the rotate function. The rotate function was pretty simple for me to get. I basically used whatever code that I wrote in the snap function, and I exchanged the x and y. Here I exchange the x and y so that when it gets the initial position of the square here, instead of snapping to the x and y position, it will snap to the y-x position, which would be here, and that would be like that. So for all these functions, I would have them. So the first, I put rotate right here. So for rotate, there's two if, and one would be that the mouse button is released and the mouse button is pressed right. So it would be that I would right click and release and it would rotate. And this is under another event handler that I wrote called rotate event handler. And the drag ship and follow ship are here in the ship event handler, and then the two snap to grids are one after the other in under event handler. And that's it for my code.